Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another weekly fighting roundup. And if you're new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like video if you do indeed like video, and let's get straight into it. So, of course, starting with the boxing news, and so Paul has offered a $20 million boxing rematch and an MMA trilogy to Fury. WBC president wants 5 to 6 judges for the Fury Usyk fight. It seems like with that and the possible kind of digital technology that might be getting involved, there's some new rules that they want to try out, and they want it to be, perfect, no doubts in this very important fight, which I do respect. Nizard versus Yasin and Jekitov versus Javicki will fight March 9th. Robertson will fight Gallardo March 27th. Cameron has split from trainer Moore. Roach Jr. has called out Foster. Cameron has teamed up with Smith. Riley has signed a long-term contract with Boxer. Visoli, Afori versus French 2, Levars versus Merger, and Buttigieg will fight March 23rd. McGann will fight Green March 8th. O'Leary will fight Martirossi March 16th. Boxer has sent an offer for Denny versus Cash. I believe just today that's been announced that I think Matchroom has won the purse bids from what I believe for that, but that will be next week's news. Silver versus Taylor, Laidback versus DWG, Hru versus Grace, and Bostwick will fight March 23rd. Very good to see Hru, who we've had on this channel, Nicky Hru, getting this opportunity on a big Misfits card as deserved, and it's about time really. PBC has offered Canelo $35 million to fight Munguia May 4th. Seems like that's probably the most reasonable or likely option for a fight for him to be having. Griffin has teamed up with McIntyre. Sanchez will fight Ruiz April 4th. Rodriguez is set to fight Estrada in June or July. Collins and Kerrigan has joined Queensbury. Benavidez is set to fight Gvozdyk in June, so he's moving up to light heavyweight and fighting for the interim, I believe, WBA or WBC belt to become mandatory challenger for the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol. Davis is willing to fight Pacquiao. No, willing to fight Azim. That is Keyshawn Davis. Haney will fight Garcia April 20th. I mean, it was already agreed, but now it's actually been announced, and so very nice to see. And I think, to be fair, them putting on the pressure by telling everybody that it was already agreed, and Matchroom pretty much putting out the poster of it as soon as it was agreed, did make it more likely that they was actually going to end up going over into the end and actually getting fully agreed. And so it's nice to see. Gulamarian will fight Ramirez March 30th. Madrimov will fight Kurbanov March 8th. Woodley has said that he will fight Pacquiao this year. I don't know if I believe that whatsoever, but there's constant rumours about who Pacquiao could fight, but I suppose you never know. EBU have ordered Pitters versus Dos Santos. Canelo could fight Eubank Jr. in May or September. That would be a big surprise, but I suppose possibly September could be a possibility. Daenerys has called out Edwards. Smith won via unanimous decision versus Mancia. Hicks won via KO Rantor versus Villa Alba. Martinez won via unanimous decision versus Pankey. Ismailov won via TK round 4 versus Norwood to remain IBF USBA light heavyweight champion. Holmes Jr. won via TK round 2 versus Harrington to remain IBF USBA super welterweight champion. Unfortunately, couldn't seem to find any of the footage from him actually winning that fight, but he is a very good talent, and it's nice to see him getting a DAZN backing, but it's I want him to be on the big cards, and he's fought on a couple of big cards, but I'd like to see him get back onto that. Barrera won via KO in round 2 versus Almacen. Caballero won via KO in round 6 versus Buenalbra. Villafuerte won via unanimous decision versus Flores. Maruillo won via unanimous decision versus Gonzalez. Sandoval won via unanimous decision versus Molina. Yaret Sam won via unanimous decision versus Randall to become WBC Continental American welterweight champion. Almeida won via TK round 4 versus Kobayashi. Masuda won via KO round 1 versus Sultan. Tanaka won via unanimous decision versus Rangel to become WBO World Super Flyweight Champion. Inoue won via KO round 9 versus Ankayas to remain WBA World Bantamweight Champion. Nakatani won via TK round 6 versus Santiago to become WBC World bantamweight champion. And to speak about that card a little bit, I mean, the Tanaka fight versus Rangel, it was quite a comfortable victory, to be fair. I think all of these were relatively comfortable victories. I mean, I got my prediction from what I believe right for this one. I mean, a 4-weight world champion now, he's definitely not really getting the credit he deserves for it, and a great fighter and a great talent, and deserves to be main eventing upcoming cards of his in the future. And he's moving up in weight and seemingly do it with ease. Anui, that fight versus Ankayas, I got my prediction wrong. I thought Ankayas would be able to win, but and Kais did look poor, to be completely honest. He didn't really look like he had anything left in him. And maybe the Martinez fights have taken quite a bit out of him, but, that kind of will and that desire to just, be in the centre of the ring and throw. He looked like he wanted to be in the centre of the ring and throw, but he was just so slow and didn't really have anything in it. I think Inoue possibly made it a little bit more difficult than he should have done, but I also respect it at the same time. I mean, he did stand toe-to-toe, and he didn't have to necessarily do that, and he probably did take a few bigger shots than what he could have done or should have done, but I respect it. A lot of times you see fighters, just like I've mentioned many a times on this channel, just kind of tiptoe around and not really wanting to show off a good performance. And with Inoue, he's always going to have that kind of shadow over him of his brother, and so it's nice to see him wanting to willingly go out there and put on an entertaining performance and an entertaining showing and get a stoppage, which he's not really especially known for, and he did that, and so fair play to him. And Nakatani, I mean, a shutout victory versus Santiago. I got my prediction right for that one, and yeah, it was a completely dominant showing. It was showing that even against a champion who has been very good, he used his range superbly, and didn't really let Santiago get in range too much. And when he did, he still let off some very good shots and managed to get him out of there in the end in impressive fashion. And there's going to be huge fights available for him. I mean, people are going to speak about the possible Inoue one if he is to move up again in weight, Nakatani, but even then, there's still huge fights about in the weight he's in at the moment. And he does show that he is a level above, and the fact that a Donaire, who has been a great champion and has been a very dominant champion in the division, even though he is on the older side, the fact that he lost in quite bad fashion versus Santiago, but Nakatani went and managed to do it in such a dominant fashion, shows that he is in his peak of his career argument at the moment. But to move on, Wiggins won via points versus Ahmed. Brown won via TK in round 2 versus Bradnam. Siddiqui won via points versus Tapfuma. McGrail won via TK in round 1 versus Phillips. Palmer won via points versus Sparta. Turner won via TK in round 1 versus Bangaiza. Harris won via unanimous decision versus Butler to become British, Commonwealth and EBU European flyweight champion. Fernandez won via unanimous decision versus Aponte. Rivera won via unanimous decision versus Dominguez to become WBA Continental American flyweight champion. Vargas won via stoppage round 8 versus Rodriguez. Giasov won via stoppage round 11 versus Kano. Cruz won via unanimous decision versus Zamaripa to remain IBF International and WBA Continental American lightweight champion. Belanga won via TK round 6 versus McCrory to remain WBO NABO super middleweight champion. And to speak about some of the fights off that card, I mean, it was very nice to see Rivera picking up the title the way he did. It was a very good fashion, and I think he is improving. And he doesn't always get the kind of big stoppages, but he's on big cards and he's showing himself, and he's improving at every level, and it's really nice to see, and I hope only the best for him. Giasov, the Kano fight wasn't really an amazingly good fight, but I mean, he's in line to fight for a title now. Willie, I don't know, but he's put himself in line now. Cruz, another dominating performance for him, to be completely honest. It was another shutout victory at one which he possibly could have got the stoppage, but obviously he didn't. But either way, it was still a very good fight and a very good performance from him. And overall, it was an impressive performance from him. And he's always going to have that thing around him with the Davis fight, and pretty much with every fight, Davis has something to say on him. And there's a lot to be built there, and I feel like Eddie Hearn is helping build that very well. I mean, what Eddie Hearn said in the IFL interview, doing his little Eubank Senior impression, was very impressive, or not very impressive, it's very funny, and very charismatic, I suppose is the right way of putting it. And Eddie Hearn's always been known for that, but it was funny, and it's selling the fight, and the fight is definitely going to get built big. It's not going to happen anytime soon, from what I realistically think. The Belanga fight was an impressive stoppage. I got my prediction right for it, and you have to think that that was a very necessary stoppage, and he was a bit slow in the earlier rounds. I feel like every big shot he landed, it seemed like it did damage to McCrory, and he could have possibly even got him out of there earlier, but eventually he did, and the sixth round ain't really too late into the fight, and overall an impressive performance. Is he ready for that of Canelo, like the possible talks of him possibly fighting him next? No, I don't think he's really anywhere near defensively ready for that, and I think he probably would get pieced apart if he fought that fight at the moment, but you never know, further on down the line. In my opinion, the fight versus, I suppose, Morrell Jr. would be an entertaining fight, or Mbili, or I mean, even in a couple fights against Munguia would be an entertaining fight. So there's fights there, but just for the moment, I feel like he's probably due another top level contender at the moment, in my opinion. Forza versus Settin was cancelled, so Forsland ended up fighting Romero, who was Settin's last opponent. Settin pulled out on the Thursday, so I'd already done my prediction at that point, which is a little bit frustrating. But either way, the fight still went ahead with Forsland fighting Romero, but we'll speak about it in just a moment. Waru Cargo won via points versus Al Bayati. Al Shira won via points versus Jensen. Osman won via points versus Bohm. Ford Jor won via KO in round 1 versus Musi Siani. Budigarde won via KO in round 1 versus Mandic. Hussein won via unanimous decision versus Milhailov. Lauren won via stoppage in round 1 versus Nut Sibdidzi. Forsman won via TK round 8 versus Romero to remain WBC and WBO World Bantamweight Champion. Another fight where, yet again, she could have cruised through, but she didn't. She managed to get a stoppage, and it's nice to see her getting a stoppage against a lesser opponent. And Romero was inevitably going to be no match for her, and she proved the levels. It's nice to see, and only big fights hopefully now. I don't even know if realistically that Settin fight is a necessary fight, but hopefully only big fights for her now. She is building seemingly a bit of a platform now. Lascurat won via unanimous decision versus Chavez to remain WBA World Super Flyweight Champion. I didn't do a prediction for that. I didn't realise it was happening, to be completely honest, but credit to Lascurat. I have done predictions of hers in the past, and I'm a little bit frustrated that I missed that one, but either way, impressive performance from her as well, and retaining her belt. Motum will fight Cuba March 30th. Gonzalez is moving up to bantamweight. Hill has called out Paul. That's Tyreek Hill, the NFL football player, calling out Jake Paul. It's a bit random. Nakajiri will fight Alvarez on March 8th, and that's all the boxing news. Moving on now to the MMA news. Pereira has signed an 8-fight contract with the UFC, which, I mean, I'm not really surprised about in general. It's nice to see. Pereira has pretty much made the middleweight division and the light heavyweight division entertaining as it has been in the past few years. He's been very much a front runner as to make it entertaining in the short time he's actually been in the UFC. And now to have this 8-fight contract, I don't blame him for signing it. I'm not surprised he signed it. I mean, he's the UFC 300 headliner, so they clearly rate him a lot, and it's clearly showing him the respect which he does deserve. Ferguson has called out Paul. Another person calling out Jake Paul. This time Tony Ferguson, strange fight. Tony Ferguson said he doesn't really care about Dana White having him down to a contract. Will that happen? Probably not. Did I think it was worth mentioning? I suppose. Another one here, Torres called out Canelo. It's just strange. I don't think it's ever going to happen, and it's just, in this weird world that we're in, you never know. Basel won via unanimous decision versus Pereira. Al Kahantani won via KO in round 3 versus Rayo. Shields won via decision versus DeSantis. Ali Walsh won via decision versus Palacio. Pico won via KO in round 1 versus Corrales. McKee won via submission in round 1 versus Collard. Romero won via decision versus Santos. Nemkov won via submission in round 2 versus Capelloza. Jackson won via KO in round 2 versus Cooper 3. Eblin won via decision versus Kasagan Gane. Ferreira won via KO in round 1 versus Bader. And to speak about the PFL vs Bellator card, I haven't actually been able to watch many of the fights off the card, to be completely honest. There's not really too much footage about of them, actually, which is a real shame because, it's a great card, and realistically, in my opinion, stuff like highlights and stuff like that should be available, especially when it's on pay-per-view. It's always going to be difficult for me to be watching it if it's on pay-per-view, but I often manage to go back and watch full fights or fight highlights if that's the only option. But, there isn't really much to find about any of these. I mean, seems like Shields just about edged past from what I've seen in that fight or what I've heard from that fight, and showed that apparently her ground game wasn't amazing, but there's no surprises that from a boxer, but credit to her still getting a win. Ali Walsh, nice seeing him getting a decision victory. McKee submission round with Collard was quite a big statement made. Romero versus Santos I always thought would be an entertaining fight and a funny one, and it was. Nemkov, I think he is a real talent and probably will go and end up going a long way, but he managed to get a nice submission there. Jackson Cooper 3, impressive as well, doing it for the Bellator boys. I mean, Eblin also getting a close decision victory versus Kasangane. People thought he would be a bit more dominant. I thought he'd be a bit more dominant. I said he'd win, so I suppose I got my prediction right, but I thought he probably would be a bit more dominant from what I've heard he was. But either way, it shows credit to Kasangane as an opponent, and yeah, Bellator did very well in this, and I think it's just shown. I mean, Bellator's been around for longer, and they've had the better history, and they've been the more successful company in recent years, and there's more of a history from them, and they've always had that close link with the UFC as well to get fighters from there. So it's no surprise really, except from of course the Ferreira one, where of course he managed to get a very big statement victory versus Bader from pretty much one shot as soon as Bader tried to come into range. The nice timing of Ferreira and the using of the range and the waiting patiently, like I mentioned in my prediction, was utilised very well, and he managed to get the shot and he landed it. Of course, he got him out of there, and it shows that Bader possibly his chin's not really there anymore, and it was a mismatch realistically on paper, I suppose. And I mean, I said that Bader would win, but he didn't, and I look at it and I take it back in my opinion. But Ferreira is now set to fight Ngannou next after Ngannou fights Joshua. Do I think the result of Ngannou Joshua is going to change anything? Probably not, but it's now an entertaining fight to be made, and it might not sell crazily well, but with the way the Saudis sold this fight, maybe, you never know. Rosas Jr. will fight Tercios March 2nd. That was meant to be this last week, but he had to pull out for injury, so it's now been moved to what I believe to be next weekend. Naimov won by KO in round 1 versus Silva. Santos won by decision versus Altamirano. Rodriguez won by submission round 2 versus Banda. Zian won by decision versus Puelles. Charas won by submission round 2 versus in round 1 versus Silva. Aguiar won by decision versus Mendoza. Barcelos won via submission round 3 versus Quinones. Torres won via submission round 1 versus Duncan. Regui won via decision versus Hughes. Zellhuber won via decision versus Prado. Ortega won via submission in round 3 versus Rodriguez. And Royval won via decision versus Moreno. And it was probably a more entertaining card on paper, I thought. I mean, I got both my prediction wrongs for this one. I did want to mention the Zellhuber fight was an impressive fight for Zellhuber. He shows that he is a good talent, and Prado, credit to him. I mean, that kind of thing, that cut was crazy, and the fact that Corner was just letting him go on and saying he didn't really need to see was, a little bit wild, but Zellhuber put together a very impressive performance, and there's always, every UFC card, it's what a lot of the time makes them entertaining, the undercards. There's always one kind of lower weight, just great clash, and that was the same there. Ortega, I mean, I thought Rodriguez would be able to get a decision win, but, he dropped him early, but Ortega managed to weather that storm and show his toughness, even though he was hurt early. And as soon as he got him on the inside, as soon as he actually started wrestling and getting him to the ground, he showed his dominance and really did put out a very impressive submission there. And Royval, the decision versus Moreno. Royval, he was the much more active fighter in the fight, and he probably did deserve the win in my opinion. And his accuracy still isn't amazing, and there is quite a few things defensively which I think he isn't very solid at. I think he does very much keep himself stood upright, and he keeps his chin quite in the air quite a lot. But Moreno, credit to him. He threw some big shots at times, but he looked a little bit, I don't know if it was the altitude or whatever, but he didn't look as strong into the later rounds as he often does, and Royval was constantly throwing and constantly going and really not wanting to be on the back foot too much for a lot of the fight, and so credit to him. Impressive performance. He probably will end up getting the rematch versus Pantoja now, and he sold that quite well, so making the flyweight division entertaining again. And UFC 306 will take place at the Las Vegas Sphere September 14th, and Cejudo has said he isn't retiring, and seems like he might want the Moreno fight next. I don't know if that's going to end up happening. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did indeed like this. Subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.